Hello, welcome back to another episode of Lessons in Creativity with your host, Sydney Price. Wow, it's been a minute. And, I think I definitely needed the breather. There was a lot that I was kind of just processing and doing with life, and things got busy, but we are back. So we're back to close out this season of Lessons in Creativity, where we kind of just laid the foundation of so many different aspects of ourselves as creative humans that allow us to create the way that we do. And, I really liked the way that this season kind of touched on different aspects of the self and just kind of unpacking certain things. We talked about grief. We talked about self-doubt. We talked about consistency and unlearning certain aspects of what consistency looks like in our lives. So for this episode, I wanted to talk about love and relationships and the ways that love and the relationships that we have in our life affect our creativity. This is an episode that I've kind of been wanting to touch on for a while, but I wanted to take some time with it. I'm actually currently reading All About Love, and I think that book has so many really good gems. The first time that I read through the book, I really couldn't get through it in its entirety. So I'm kind of taking another lap around. And I think, I'm picking up on things that I didn't pick up before. It kind of inspired this episode in a way. So I hope that us having this conversation, it'll spark some things for you. Yeah, so I feel like when we think about the topic of love, we think about it romantically, right? But in this episode, I don't just want to talk about romantic love. I want to talk about platonic love, familial love, and the love that you have within yourself, and essentially the relationship that you have with yourself, because I think all of those things come together to really have a sort of effect on your creativity. And it has taken me a while throughout my creative journey to really recognize the ways that my creativity is affected by these different relationships. So yeah, I just kind of want to share what I've learned, starting with relationships with friends and family. I think these are the first relationships that we ever truly learn from and really develop early on in life. I can remember definitely in my childhood, my creativity was supported and both neglected in different ways. And, I think that I leaned on my friends and my family at the time in different ways to kind of affirm me or to validate me in the things that I was creating. So I was a kid who definitely was very introverted, but had a lot on their mind. Like, I thought about the world in such a deep and just imaginative way. I think the way that I thought about the world then versus now is very, very different, obviously, as you have more experiences. But I was so emotionally attached to what I created, and everything that I did make came from the emotions that I was feeling, because 9 times out of 10 I was feeling them for the first time. So my first heartbreak or my first love, a lot of what I created was based off of love. One of my most viral pieces was called To My Next Boyfriend, and that was inspired by a crush I had back in high school. And just the whimsicalness of that experience for me, it was so interwoven into everything I did. And honestly, when that piece went viral, it went viral on the internet, but I didn't tell my friends about it really, and I didn't tell my family. So if you knew, you knew. And it took me a while to actually feel excited to share, with my family, because for so long I think there was this mindset that I had that I couldn't share these creative endeavors because, what are they leading me to? What is this going to develop into? What is the bigger picture of this? And I think those are questions that I received. So I was then asking myself those same questions, and that prevented me from sharing, and being confident in what I was creating. So, and that was in childhood, and I definitely was very sensitive when it came to sharing, because I felt like when I did share, I was allowing myself to be criticized. So I was very protective of that for a while. I would only share the parts of my creativity that I felt would be praised. So at a young age, I had a lot of achievements, I did a lot of great things academically and was able to use my creativity to get awards and do competitions and things like that, very like forward facing things. But the parts of my creativity that were a little less glamorous weren't always affirmed in the ways that I needed them to be. And those are conversations that I felt more confident to have with my parents as I got older, but at the time it was very, very hard. So I can definitely see how that affects my creativity to this day. I'm 24 years old, and literally even now, there are moments where I have so much perfectionism towards something because I feel the need to only present when I am perfect. I also notice that I tend to overthink things and overanalyze things when it comes to my creativity because I'm trying to figure out if I've checked every single box, if I have thought ahead of the people that are about to take in this information or take in whatever I've created, what kind of questions I might get and what type of criticism I might experience. And it's been such a hard lesson to learn and thing to unpack that I'm not sure if it will ever truly leave me, but I definitely now see and know what the root cause of that is. So yeah, I think that's something to definitely think about when it comes to your creativity and how it has been affected by your friends and your family. I also remember when I first started my business, I had to learn, your friends and your family are not your target audience. I think that was like a big thing that like a lot of, like marketing gurus and stuff would say, but I feel like there was so much depth to that. Like they're not your target audience. One, because a lot of the time you won't receive the support you're looking for from your friends and family initially, but then two, like they're just not who you're marketing to overall and who you may be creating for, and that is totally fine. But I think it's the expectation that the people closest to you should be the first ones to support you, and unfortunately that's not always the case. So yeah, it definitely took a lot of building, and I think I'm at a place now where I have wonderful friends and amazing family members that support me and what I do, but then there's still always that question of like, what do you actually do, and like that is very hard to come to terms with because I think it like triggers that part of me again to like really not know if what I'm doing is really being seen as valuable. So yeah, those are a few of the conversations and thoughts that have come up for me in terms of like friendship, relationships, and family relationships, and how it all comes together to affect how I express creatively. So yeah, I don't necessarily have like a solution to that, but I think it's just like the unpacking of it and understanding it and honoring it has been really important for me. So I think friends and family is the first level of our support system that we build, right? So the type of relationships that we often experience next are romantic relationships. As I said before, like love really inspired a lot of my creativity, especially in my younger years and even now, honestly, but especially back then. And I think that love has been one of the biggest catalysts for my learning, and I embrace that like in so many ways. And it's different for everyone. Some people create through sadness or deeper feelings. Some people create through happiness and joy, and I think mine was kind of just like a mixture of most emotions and love being at the center of it. So my romantic relationships really kind of fueled my creativity and inspired my creativity, but also supported it. I think that some of my first romantic relationships were so beautiful and were so passionate because of how connected to my creativity they were. I think the first few relationships that were meaningful and happened in my adulthood were with people that were also creative, and that was a game changer for me when we talk about support systems, if you don't have that in your friends and family, I think we often look for that in romantic relationships. And as creative people, that is often with other creative people. So I remember really putting a lot of emphasis on my relationships for the fact that that felt like that was my only support or my main support. And I don't think it was a conscious thing. I think it was very subconscious, but it was still like this deep attachment to those relationships and wanting to keep them for the sake of keeping some sort of support, and then also keeping my creativity. I think I definitely remember when I wasn't in a relationship or in love or crushing, I wasn't producing as much and I didn't create as much. And I think for me, it challenged me to also look at different sources of creativity. But at the time, I'm thinking, we're talking like high school, like early high school. Well, not even early. We're talking like late high school, just graduated, early college. Like this is where my creativity was really springing and blossoming and flourishing, but it was going in so many different directions. So I think that for me, I really look to romantic relationships as like that direction for me. I think that there was such a beautiful aspect to that, but then there was also kind of the negative aspect to it, where when the relationship wasn't so pretty, right? Because this is my first experience of relationships. It's my first kind of, it's the beginning of like me learning to love. And with that comes also the heartbreak. And, you know, I think there were moments when I was able to create through it and be inspired by it. I remember like in high school, there was like this after school program I was in, and one of the advisors or whatever was like, he saw me come in crying, and I had just asked my crush like to go to the prom with me or something, and my crush said no. And I just remember crying and like running into the classroom, and he looked at me, he was like, you know, just like write it out, like write out how you're feeling. And ever since then, I think I've just kind of been like taking that on as a practice. But it's just like, you know, the heartbreak, sometimes I was able to create through it and sometimes I wasn't. And it was the really traumatic experiences with love that I've had that caused me to actually stop. It created this mental halt for me that was so like jarring that I couldn't even create. I couldn't figure out how to express this. And I think that's the piece of it. It's expression. Getting to a point of feeling so much that you don't even know how to express it and move through it is also, you know, just like a process in creativity that I don't think that I really understood at the time. I really didn't. And even reflecting on it now, it feels like, oh, I was just in a rut. But, you know, I think it's more layered than that. It's a rut, but it's also like my body was processing, you know, and creative expression then looked different. I couldn't just hop on YouTube and make a video about it. I couldn't just like pick up my camera and, you know, try to create through it. It was like something I had to feel through. So yeah, I definitely feel like romantic relationships can steer your perspective when it comes to creativity. And I think even now, I'm so protective of the love that I give and the places that I look to receive love, because that in itself is going to affect my creativity. Like, there are relationships that will make or break me, and I have to be cognizant of that, and I have to be weary, and I have to be protective of my own creative energy in that way too. So I think that's like a piece of enlightenment that I've just kind of gotten throughout the years of like, you don't have to do that. Like, you don't have to put yourself through that, and you probably shouldn't for the sake of other parts of yourself. So, you know, romantic relationships definitely played a huge role in my creativity, and they still do today. But I think the biggest relationship and most important relationship is the one that you have with yourself. Talking about the relationship with self is one that I think it's so multi-layered, and there's so much to it, right? Because this is the longest relationship that you're going to have in your life. Yeah. The longest relationship you will have in your life is with yourself. So taking the time to really unpack and understand yourself as an individual and as a creative is it's like a life journey, you know? So at this point in my life, I've been doing a lot of like inner child and inner teen work, and really just reflecting on who that girl was and is. The way that your inner child expresses creativity is something that you really want to understand and get to know, and honestly remember. I think that especially if you are in your late 20s, early 30s, etc., you forget a lot of how your younger self just expressed and created things. And I think it's just natural to do that, but it is so valuable to go back to that and remember where that creative energy came from and where that creativity was inspired, because the ways that I've just kind of returned back to those places and done those things, and it has felt so, it's felt validating in the ways that it wasn't before. It's just, I think it's something that a lot of people don't really take the time to do, and it's helped me along my journey to just do that, right? To pay homage to my younger self and create the way that she did. Like, what were the songs that she was listening to? Like, what were the places that she was writing? Like, what were the styles of creativity? Because your style of creativity changes throughout the years, you know? I started off as a poet. Like, that was my first, being a writer and being a poet was like my first medium for creativity and creative expression. And now I don't write as much as I did before. And there was a point in my life where I was so sad about that. I believe it was around 2021, 2022, getting out of a really hard breakup and moving into my first apartment by myself. It gave me a lot of time to think about who that girl was and who that person was before I had experienced all of that. And you know, the person that I was before, in college and pre-pandemic and pre-life experiences, was way different than who I then was post that and who I even am now. And there was a time where I was actually grieving that. And that was so hard to do. It was so hard to grieve the person that I was before and the girl I was before, and like who she was and how she expressed things. But once I got to a point where I realized like there's so much power in being able to evolve and to develop and have new ways of creative expression, like it's not a bad thing, you know? So I mean, I think that allowed the grief to be a little bit lighter, but there were definitely times where I was like, dang, I'm not the same person. Like, I don't write the same. I don't do the same things. And I wonder if I will still be praised. Like, I wonder if I will still be validated and if what I'm creating will still be valuable to someone, because I wasn't going viral. I wasn't, you know, creating in ways that impacted people in the same way. Like, it was different. It's all different, you know? So allowing myself to evolve has been one of the greatest gifts to my creativity. And I'm just so glad that I have given myself room and space to just stretch, you know, because that's what it's about. And like, I'm honoring who I was then and who I am now by allowing myself to evolve and to evolve creatively. So I think there's just so much to say on the topic of love and relationships and, you know, the relationship with self. And I think these are definitely the things that I've been giving thought to, but I'm definitely interested to hear from you and your own experiences with friends and family support to romantic relationships and the relationship that you have with your own self, and you know how that has affected your own creativity. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. We are officially wrapping up season 1, episode 9. One more episode to go. So thank you guys for being along this journey with me, and I will see you in the next video.